Hey, welcome back to Black Fathers Foundation Conversations. Today's topic is going to be for my brothers with daughters. But before we get there, we have a very special guest. Dr. Sharice Chambers is a board certified OB/GYN and fellowship trained pediatric and adolescent genealogist. She is a graduate of Spelman College and the University of Alabama School of Medicine. She launched her social media platform, The Period Doctor, in the summer of 2019 after recognizing an unmet need for medically accurate reproductive health information and minority physician representation. Wow, that is a lot. So, Dr. Chambers, thank you for being here with us. And the Period Doctor, tell me all about that. Break
Yeah.
that down for me.
So I kind of dubbed myself the period doctor because I do take care of younger girls. And one of the main reasons that I end up seeing a lot of my patients is period issues. So it's important to remember that periods can start a lot earlier than a lot of people think. They can start as early as the age of 9 and as late as 15. So there's so many people that think a 9-year-old having a period is like mind blowing. It's normal. It's still within the realm of normal. The average age is 12 and a half, but not everybody's going to be that lucky to be average or later. So you have to understand the distribution is such that half of the people are going to be before the age of 12 and a half. And so that's the majority of my work, which is why I chose that title.
Okay, all right. I'm still. You did blow my mind. 9 years old.
Yeah.
I have a 6-year-old and a 5-year-old, and mentally, I'm prepared in my head, teenage or preteen. But over half, you said 9 years old.
So over half are going to be less than 12 and a half. And so that's going to be your 11, 10, and 9-year-olds.
Wow, wow. So tell us a little bit. I see we have your website up there. Tell us a little bit about. Yeah, yes, good.
So yes,
Okay,
my
good.
website is meant to be a resource. And so I think the best thing about having a website, having a social media page is that you can look at this without subscribing, without doing anything. It's very anonymous in the sense where you can just pick up information. I have under my Instagram guides that walk through periods. And I even have a very specific Girl Dads course on how to guide your daughters through puberty and periods. And I'll put that link available. I think Greg's going to make that available on the Black Fathers Foundation page. But ultimately, we want dads in this conversation. It's not to call dads out, but to call you in because dads are important. There's so many people and daughters who are growing up in homes where they spend half the time with their dad, or their dad is full time raising them, or whatever the case may be. And so many girls start their periods with just their dad around. And so if you're truly a girl dad who wants their daughter to win across the board, excel in sports, excel athletically and scholastically and all those things, getting them through this part of life is important.
So my first question to you is, and I know for myself, how long are your classes? Do you have a bunch of classes, or a bunch of mini classes, or
No,
one
this
big
is
long class?
a 30-minute little course. It's like everything that a girl dad would want to know: the basics, the warning signs, how to prepare, the best medication for cramps, what not to do, those sorts of things. And I like it because while I had dads on that call, it was like a Zoom kind of virtual conference last year during the pandemic. You can watch it from the comfort of your home. I think it's like $6.99, like $6, like where you can just purchase that. You can watch as many times as you want to. And it's something that you can feel, comfortable in the space of your home. If you have questions, obviously you can reach out to me, but it covers pretty much anything that you would want to know without maybe that awkwardness that a lot of people feel when first entering into the conversation.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So, what is the most popular misconception dads have about, look, I'm throwing out my quotation, the period?
Exactly. I think dads a lot of the time think that their child has to be or look a certain way to have that period, be a certain age, 13, at least be in eighth grade, at least be, wearing a certain type of bra, at least have an attitude, all these things. And that's not
Attitude.
the case. It's not necessarily the case. The other thing that I just want to kind of touch on is that when that child gets that first period, it's like, oh, I'm losing my little girl. That ain't true. That girl that's still very much so a child in front of you that needs to be guided through this process just like they're guided through everything else. The way you walk them through losing baby teeth that just bleed a little bit and then other teeth replace it without freaking out, you can walk them through this normal, physiological, necessary process with authority and with confidence and with love. And that's what fathers do. right?
I love that. I love that. I mean, I like the fact that you kind of said, losing some teeth. I mean, the fact that you're equating that, I'm like, okay, it's
Well, it's a strange
like,
process. You're not going through it yourself. There's a little bit of blood. It's a little bit of uncertainty. And the kid's like, is this okay? This is all I've ever known. Is it okay? And you say, yes, this is a normal thing we go through. And on the other side, you're okay. And that I think is the why I try to equate those, because dads don't think of that as like a gender thing. They don't think of it as a space that they can't enter into. Dads love a loose tooth. They might pull it out or something like that. You know? And so that's one of my best analogies, but it's imperfect. I admit that.
yeah, right. But you drew me in. I was like, huh, never thought about that perspective. Okay, I'll take that. So, what are some of the hardest things you've seen dads have how to transition out of when their little girls are growing up?
Yeah, well, I think, there's certain things where dads want to fix everything, right? They're just like, if she's hurting, I'm fixing it. And there's certain spaces, and just about periods, girls are going to be a little bit uncomfortable because their body's changing and they're trying to adjust to that too. And so it's being available, it's being a meaningful resource. I can talk to my dad if I need a menstrual product, if I need pain medicine. He's not going to freak out and be so caught up in his own feelings that he can't support me as a parent. That's what I care most about. Now, your daughter's not going to be telling you everything like, "Oh, give me this specific tampon." Okay, there are going to be some boundaries, and so really just kind of navigating that transition. It's a transition of, yes, they deserve privacy. This is a private matter, but they still need parents to walk through certain aspects of it. They can't drive. They need medication. They need certain things that tap you in as a parent, and being ready for that and being able to know what you're doing.
Listen, I'm okay with that. Go to the store and get something very specific. I mean, my
Yeah.
wife sends me, so
Yeah.
it's like if anything else, she'll text it to me. Give me the picture, give me the aisle that it's
Mhm.
in, and I'll get exactly what you're asking for. I have no problem with that. So I'm on board with that.
Awesome.
Listen, Doctor, this has been great. Thanks for the introduction. We want to have you on just specifically by yourself,
Yeah.
so that we can really get into some other things. I really want to appreciate you coming on today, and we're looking forward to seeing you next time. Okay,
Thank you so much.
thank you. Hey guys, just make sure you take advantage of that. Her information is still scrolling at the bottom for all you black fathers out there that are maybe having issues or think you may have an issue or you're just getting prepared. If you're an early guy, take advantage of the period doctor and all the information that she has available to you. Now, let's get into it. Back to For My Brothers with Daughters. The first person I want to introduce is Dr. Lamar Shields, is a social entrepreneur, inspirational speaker, and educator who loves to create and build with purpose. As the co-founder and senior director of education innovation at the Cambio Group and former professor at the Johns Hopkins School of Education, Dr. Lamar Darnell Shields has dedicated his life to inspiring adults and youth alike to pursue a higher purpose. Dr. Lamar Shields, welcome aboard, brother. How are you?
Man, I am great and grateful to be here and honored. It's interesting listening to Dr. Chambers. I remember going into my daughter's room. It was almost like a Cosby moment. And I know people diss Bill Cosby, but let me just tell you, I learned tons of lessons on that show. And
Indeed.
I remember her mom telling me that she started her cycle. And I remember going in the bed in the room, and I just was laying in the bed next to her. We talking about duty, 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 duty. I'm like, so your mom told me you started your cycle. She puts the pillow on her face, like, oh, I can't believe you. I'm like, yes,
It's
this is
okay.
normal. Yes,
Right.
yes, yes. I want to have this conversation, and they're behind me, my screensaver. So to hear her say that, I mean, that's a deep conversation because Barry, my buddy who has children older than me. I remember when he said it, my buddy Eric in Indianapolis, hopefully he's watching because he has daughters. And he said to me, Barry, he said, man, Kennedy, this means that Kennedy can have children. And I was like, that was foreign to me. I was like, when she started, I was like, oh, you are right. So I'm thinking when he hit me with that, then of course 3 or 4 years later, I had my children. So I'm so glad that she talked about that because again, there's so many amazing dads out there who are raising their daughters, who are doing an amazing job. I just wish, Barry, that they had social media like that now. When my children were younger, my 2 daughters behind me, Samira Adama is 17 and Hadaya Ayodele I was 19 years old. Believe me, I recorded everything that they did. I enjoy them. Both of them are artists.
Both
Samira,
of them creative like that.
yes, Samira is an actress, and if you saw her in the room, she would not talk at all. But her mom is an actress, and I was reading about all these actors who are very quiet and very shy, and so I encourage her to take acting classes at Center Stage where I live here in the Maryland area. And man, Barry, wide open, wide open. My oldest daughter, Ayodele, I call her Mariposa in Spanish. You did a good job, brother, with the Cambio group. Your Spanish accent, we got to work on just a little bit, but you
Hey,
did
look.
you did
That's
decent
my
job.
wife's thing. I give that to her. She's got the accent down. I'm the one who
So
butchers everything.
you did a good job, sending the Cambio group. So hanging out with these girls is a blessing. Man, I learned so much from them. I think about when Matt asked me to participate, and I'm so glad that we're talking about dads, or they call me Baba. They call me Baba, which means father in Swahili. I thought about Michelle Obama when she said, tell her every day she is smart and capable, and lift her up, and don't underestimate the power of day-to-day motivation, inspiration to a girl's life. My home girl from the
Right.
South Side of Chicago, Michelle Obama said that. And now
Ah,
that I would eventually have my own daughters, it is a blessing and an honor. I don't know if it's payback to all the women that I destroyed probably in my high school and college. I don't know if that's payback, Barry. But let me just
look. We
say this.
won't talk about that. That'll be after. That's the after show right there. That's the
After
after show.
show.
'Cause I got some stories too. We're gonna talk about. But I got to bring on our two other guests here.
Bring these brothers
So
on.
next one. David C. Miller, a Baltimore native, has written several powerful children's books specifically designed to engage male readers of color. These books include Chef Toussaint, Brooklyn's Finest, The Green Family Farm, Gabe and His Green Thumb, and Khalil's Way, and They Look Like Me. Mr. Miller, David, how are you, brother? How's everything?
Brother, how you doing, man? Just super excited to have this conversation this evening.
Hey, it's good to hey, great to have you. And let me see. I have one more guest, and this gentleman was born in Detroit, raised in Springfield, Illinois. Mr. Mark Clark has had the opportunity to live the life he dreamed of, from his radio career and media to his love for his wife, Allison, and their marriage of over 21 years. I got some questions for you, brother. I got some questions. And there are three amazing daughters. He's now on an amazing weight loss journey, and every morning at 7:15 a.m. You can find him on the treadmill with a positive message on his page, the YouTube page, Reinventing Mark Clark. Mr. Clark, thank you for joining us today, brother.
Man, it's a blessing to be here with my friends, longtime friends, and of course, celebrating our lovely daughters. Again, it's just a blessing to be here, and I'm ready to chop it up.
Chop it up. Oh, okay. So I got to start it off with this. So our producer is going to throw up some images for us, some things that from our past that we've seen, some things that we might have gone through personally, and I want to get
Man, hold
everybody.
up.
Look, nothing from the Freaknik days, man. We're not going back that far. Okay.
Okay. Freaking a check. Okay.
Right.
All right.
Safe.
They
We're in the
too
safe zone.
young to know about Freaknik. Your audience too young to know about
Right.
that.
Right. Did I just date all of us?
You did.
Do that? My bad. That was on me. That was on me. So he's going to throw these images up here, and I want us to discuss and have a conversation about that transition that we go through as dads when our baby girls start growing up. Now I love this image right here. The guy has the T-shirt, dads against daughters dating. He's got his baby girl there, and then the next one, I like this one is one of the most infamous ones on Instagram. I feel like, and
Wow.
I hope that was staged. I
don't know.
The young brother doesn't look like he's actually acting or anything. And for me, I grew up on this movie. I was probably 16, 17 years old when this image came out. It's probably in the first email I sent you, Greg. But it's the image of Reggie in Bad Boys when Martin Lawrence and Will Smith come out.
Yeah.
They had just got finished arguing. But when his baby girl's date shows up, man. So my question to any of you is, And it sounds like I got some cats that I'm gonna be calling because you have some teenagers and young women that you're already raising or have raised. How do you handle that? I want to start with Mr. Clark first, David next, and then Dr. Shields afterwards.
Well, I will say, so I had my oldest, who's 20. She has a boyfriend, and he's a good brother. And then my 16-year-old, she had a boyfriend, and of course was crushed. So for me, I was the advocate of don't. I would say just not. I wasn't a big advocate for having boyfriends, but I didn't do the scary technique because I remember the girls I grew up with who had the dads that were like that were off the chain. You know, it was always like it was like they were off the chain. They couldn't wait. It was like, oh, I even felt bad for them. I was like, oh no. And so I think that was always in the back of my head. So I was like, okay, I'm not doing that technique. But I do, you know, I do the look them in the eye, you know, young man kind of chop it up kind of thing, get a vibe for. And I remember this one brother, he was so smooth. He was a flag. I knew, you know, he said something real smooth. He said something like, you know, he was a football player, and he said something like, I said something about lifting weights with him, and he said, "Oh, I'm sure you're more stronger than I am." You know, some kind of line. I was like, oh, this brother, and sure enough, he was whack. But and then my youngest daughter's boyfriend, he was a good friend. And I think that's the part I learned from, and sadly it went south. You know, they would have been great as friends because, as we know, the boys want something that the girls, the boys want something that the girls may not want to. They have two different objectives, I guess what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. And as friends, they had a great friendship because they were forthcoming, and he was a great friend. And I just didn't want it to go the other way it did, and sadly, it broke up. But yeah, man, I wasn't the guy. I do a strong handshake, but that was it. I wasn't trying to be the intimidated dad. I wanted to be the guy in the mix, and so far it has worked with my oldest. You know, we're watching television together. They cook in the kitchen together. They're going. He's joining us on vacation. So I didn't do the thug dad treatment.
Thug dad, I love that. Mr. Miller.
No, man, I'm just so excited that you guys are having this conversation. I'm also a researcher and looking more critically at the relationship between Black fathers and daughters. And from a research perspective, you know, looking at this phenomenon, Black fathers raising daughters has been ignored. But on a personal level, I'm a father of two daughters, and I know both these guys really well. On a super serious note, we want our daughters to have healthy relationships with young men. But at the same time, as fathers, I think it's critically important because each of us got a past. We from different cities. We had some very unique relationships with, you know, girls and women in college. We're not going to go there. But at the same time, you know, you also got to be able to draw a line in the sand and let this cat know at the end of the day, player, this young lady has a father who will ride for her. You know, I remember my oldest daughter's 25, and I literally did not like her boyfriend. And so, you know,
at all, not even a little bit,
period, at all. And the one or two times that the brother got in my car, I set a ski mask on the dashboard and some duct tape on the passenger seat because I just really wanted to send this brother a message, right? That this young lady here got folk who gonna ride with her, right? And I know that may sound a little difficult for some people to stomach, but Mark and Lamar, we all know brothers who preyed on young ladies when we were in high school or in college, who didn't have a father who would ride with them. And so, you know, that was just one presentation, you know, the ski mask and the duct tape, which can be very effective. But at the same time, just sitting down, sharing with the brother and asking the brother questions, not necessarily to make him feel uncomfortable, but just to understand his intent. Because I know your intent, right? But I want you to tell me your intent. Let's keep it 100. You want to sleep with my daughter. Let's put that thing out on the table and let's have a conversation about why I'm not in favor of that. I think dads ultimately want to send a message that we're gonna ride for our daughters, but at the same time, because all of us want to help inspire and build healthy males, that we want to have serious conversations about life. How are your grades in school? What's your plan post high school? Who are your parents? Who was your father? What kind of father figures did you have, or male mentors that helped you with your development? So all of us are going to have those healthy, important conversations with these young men that date our daughters. But at the same time, man, we're going to draw a line in the sand and let them know, yo, if you hurt her, brother, I got forensic textbooks in the basement. Well, we're not gonna go there. We're not gonna go there.
Dr. Shields, man, chime on in here, brother. Chime on in here, man.
Man,
I see you tearing up with me. I'm tearing up.
Because I know David. Let me just tell you that. And David's daughter is older than my daughter. And one of the things I admire that he taught me early, he says, man, take your daughter on her first date. Take her on her first date so she knows what to expect. And I see that with my daughter now, with my son, that when we go to a door, my daughter stop at the door. When they get in the car, my daughter stop, because he's learning that. And I say, you need to protect them. My oldest daughter is the only one that's dated, and really that was really serious. And so she went to an all-girls school. So I'm always concerned about when she gets caught up in these boys, because she's not in that space. So she loses it when she gets caught up. And I just remember I always told her, I said, I'm never, and I'm real clear, and I may grow out of it. I'm never going to like the dudes that you date. Just be real clear. That's just right where I am right now. I told her that up front. And it's interesting because she's dating this one brother now. And sometimes I feel bad because she wants me to like him. She calls me Baba, like, Baba, he's a vegan like you. Baba, did you know he's into herbal medicine? And I'm like, okay. I was into that when I was in college. I started good. Diet. My hashtag is meat free since '93, but I was still, who I was. But what's interesting about them is that I am learning a lot from them as it relates to relationships. With their mother, she allowed a little more than I would. Like in high school, letting the dude stay over a little late, taking them to different places, and I'm like, we need to sort of pump the brakes just a little bit. But I do remember being in Chicago. I'll never forget this. We were in Chicago, and again, she met this one brother. And what's interesting, David knows a couple of guys who were there. All my boys rolled up on this dude because we didn't know him. And she was like, oh, he goes to Urban Prep. David and I know the founder of the school. It's a great school in Chicago. He does all these things. And I remember grabbing this dude's ear, because my daughter is in Baltimore and we're in Chicago, and where I grew up. She ain't built like that. And I grabbed his ear. I said, man, you need to bring my daughter back much better than she's leaving. And it's funny to hear Hadiah share the story, like, man, my dad really, and David and Mark, listen, I couldn't believe I grabbed this dude's ear. Like, I was like, did I just grab this dude's ear? Like,
that was out of body experience.
Right.
I felt bad that I grabbed his ear, because I did grab his ear, and I was like, I just grabbed this dude's ear, and he brought her back. But again, we put our daughters around each other, David and Mark, and watching Mark raise his daughters. They need to see strong men and hear about our story. I've shared some gruesome stories with my children about being in college and high school and those things, to be very, very clear that there are people that are out there, and they are beautiful women. I mean, my daughters are amazing and smart, but again, they don't have that Chicago sense. And I don't want them to have it. I want them to have it a little bit, but I want them just to be observant when they're evident in floor. Like David said, man, take your daughter on her first date so she knows what to expect. So I'm gonna make it hard for the next person. My pastor, I'm gonna shut up and say this, Pastor Willie Wilson, I'll never forget this. When his daughter got married, and you all know Pastor Wilson in DC, international speaker, and his daughter, when he asked for her the hand, the father, John, Pastor Wilson said, I brought her first popsicle. Man, hair stood up on my arm. See, dads know what I mean. He said, and he was like, can you top that? And I'm sitting there like, because to a kid, that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. So when he said and he said it real slow, I bought her a first popsicle when I taught her how to ride a bike. And it just sent chills, because at that time I didn't have children. So I didn't know what that actually meant until I had my own children.
So Barry,
Hey.
I just want to thank you for having me on with the two most violent fathers in the history of fatherdom, grabbing ears and damn guns and masks
No guns, Mark.
and
No
tape.
guns, Mark.
Mask,
I don't know
duct
what
tape.
I don't know. I don't know this motley crew I'm on with today. I don't know. I know these brothers.
You find out some new things,
Grabbing
right?
ears in Chicago. And you know brothers from Chicago. That brother had to be terrified.
Look, and that leads into the perfect kind of segue, because I want to know. I always ask this of my fathers, of my girl dads. Do you pass on your man card to your daughters? Do you give them the ropes? Do you let them know this is what he's going to come with? This is what he's going to say? Because I've found that so many folks compartmentalize their daughters and their sons.
Mm.
And we've fallen into this thing where, and I know this is a hashtag right about now, but teach your boys how to treat women, because we haven't been doing that. So, do they have your man card? Have you pulled that out and made sure they know every game in the book?
Barry, not only do they have the man card, they get the toolbox. and part of that is because you got some young sisters out here that be cursing brothers out. So it's what's appropriate, what's not, but also to particularly my youngest daughter, she's 16, she's still she's still home. Really also teaching her how to navigate. The same lessons I taught my son: what to do when stopped by the police, how to spot danger, what happens when you're out with your friends. She's 16. A lot of times 16-year-olds are invited to house parties. There may be drugs, there may be alcohol. What do you do if you're in an environment where you feel uncomfortable? What do you do if you and some of your friends are out, coming from the mall, coming from the subway? Got to keep your head on the swivel. Not having your phone to your ear or your earpods in your ear. And so oftentimes, us authentic fathers, we giving our daughters the entire toolbox, not just how to treat, young men, but also how to develop meaningful relationships with other young ladies. But then all of those survival skills that you need when you leave our households, because we know that there are people out there preying on our daughters.
Yeah. And Barry, I want to add, man, I have been very intentional their entire lives about surrounding them with books that affirm them. I surround my girls with books that affirm them, not only just around Black History, Women History Month. I've always used this time as an opportunity to talk about how beautiful they are. I have two daughters who have two different shades, and I want to talk about that. That's a conversation that we sort of struggle with. We talked about, colorism at a very young age. My youngest daughter, her hair is like my mother's, very curly, very, very easy to work with. My oldest daughter, Hadiah, who's in the front, her hair was thick, and she would say to her mother, I want to get my hair like Samira. I want my hair like Samira. And she struggled. And I said, when you get older, you're going to want that thick, strong hair. You're going to be proud of your eyebrows. So David talked about that book, but I just want to talk about constantly complimenting them about how they look. And then also, introducing them to other women outside of their mother and their aunties and big mamas and abuelita and Madea, all those parents around, but women that's going to affirm them and also celebrate them of who they are, because each one of my girls are very, very, they're different. And I remember introducing them in a different way. And I had to catch myself. I said, why am I calling one this and one the other? Because I'm teaching them the opposite about the other. And so it's real important to affirm, because we know, as David talked, let me put my research hat on, when they don't get it from you, they're going to go somewhere else to get it.
Yeah.
We have to be the ones to say, Mark Clark and I, we used to share stories about Mark the OG. Well, David's daughter is older, but, I spent time with Mark on the radio station and talking to him and sharing these intimate stories about his daughters, and then, being mindful of what my daughters may or may not go through. And so I told my daughter, I said, being a woman is hard. I said, but being a woman of color is even harder than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely believe in. You ask about the toolbox or the playbook. I think for me, I think as a dad, I think keeping it real from just being honest and helping them understand. I think a lot of times people always say, well, are your daughters, are they wrapped around your fingers? Sadly, I feel bad in some ways because I'm not a wrap around your finger type dad. I'm a more keep it real dad, and so, it's like, I'm not falling for the BS, and I'm not going to tell you the BS. I'm going to tell you the straight truth. I'm going to tell you how important it is. I say freshly scrubbed is the term I like to use for when I look at young people in general, especially women, and of course my daughters. That means that appearance. It's not about the brands you're wearing. It's about you looking clean, having on, keeping yourself clean, keep being fresh, being aware of how you look and present yourself, how you approach people. You are responsible for yourself. I have these kind of real conversations. You can see that look in their eyes like, oh Lord, here come Dad. But it's like keeping it real. And like you said, and we start talking about relationships with boys. Boys want sex. Boys want to have sex with you. Okay, that's what their priority is. What's up with that? Same thing. Like, I've created 3 Thurgood Marshall lawyers when they argue in points. And so you can imagine from videos like WAP to Megan Thee Stallion to Cardi B, when we have these real conversations and they start talking about, how women are represented and how, what I'm saying, you have these conversations. I keep it real, but I also keep it real, even from the standpoint of, if you saying if you got a WAP, then, having that conversation with boys, you're playing into, you're entering into the contest that they're trying to win.
That narrative they're trying to go down.
So just understand what you're saying. And if you're cool with that, that's on you. That's not on me. Your life is your life and my life is my life. But I'm going to give you the information and help you understand what everything means. But the decisions you make are your decisions. Daddy can't save you from bad decisions. All I can do is give you the information and you have to make the right decision for yourself. And like David said earlier, this is what I suggest. This is what I suggest. This is what I recommend. But I let them understand that, again, it is their life. I think a lot of times as parents, we want to live their life for them. You can't. And especially with your baby girls, you like, you don't want them to ever leave, but you have to be honest with them. So I do give them the game and I do give them the toolbox. And hopefully they use the tools. Hopefully they get that wrench out sometimes.
Right.
Sometimes, because we know some of them never use the tools, so it's too late.
Right.
Well, when I dropped Tadaya off, when we dropped her off as a family, she's at a Prairie View A&M, which is HBCU. After her mother left and her brother left and her sister, it was her 2 roommates and they were in there. Her roommates from Atlanta. And I had a hardcore conversation with them. And I said, I don't want anything to come between you, the 2 of you as roommates. I know I've watched roommates fall apart because of boys, and I say because of girls, because this is definitely 2020. That sisters also are dating one another. And I said, but you all need to support each other as women. And let me tell you some of the things that's being planned right now that you don't know. Because believe me, we got a snitching policy in the Shields household, and I heard some things on the yard that I need to share with my daughter. And so I wanted them to know to keep that bond together with your roommate, but then also protect yourself. I had to have the conversation with my daughter when she left the party and left her friends there, and I had to call a couple of my female friends, and I said, "What's the rule? What's rule number 1, ladies, when you go out?" And they said, "Never leave with somebody without your friends knowing where you're going."
Right. Yeah.
Never.
Wow.
I had to walk my daughter. We were in New Orleans, and I had to show how to navigate. See, nobody told her. I had to walk her through New Orleans, Barry, because I went to school in Louisiana, and I'm showing her. I said, "You see that woman right there? Somebody gonna put something in her drink." I said, "You see that person over her phone like that? Somebody gonna snatch it." I said, "You see these 2 Joes over here? They're about to run." And she said, "You see all that?" The first thing she said, we get down there, she says, "Barry, it smell like pee down here." Yeah, this is Bourbon Street, but that's where her mind smell like pee. All these people down here, you smelling pee. So I had to show her because Mark, David, nobody sat us down to do that. We came from areas where people would take advantage of you if you don't pay attention. So I had to literally walk my daughter through when we're driving in the car. I said, you put your windows up, you blast your music, but you put those windows up because somebody may reach in I had to teach her these things. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't have to teach my son that, but she was the first one to go away to school, and I want to be the mind. Because again, be real clear, when I was in college, it was a whole bunch of us praying on that. We knew who to go after. We knew where the bell was. All right, who were the lions? We knew. I would say, David, we got us one over here, and we got to be very transparent.
Why you say my name, man? Say Mark. Don't put me out there like that.
Yeah, he did blast you. He really blasted you.
Yeah, David. But no, that's real talk, Barry. The sad reality is, outside of all of the things that we have to prepare our daughters for, whether it's hair texture, skin color, academic achievement, grace, we also got to teach them how to keep their head on a swivel. Being at a party, mom and dad are not always going to be there. If you're at a bar, and even if you're drinking a Pepsi, when you leave and go to the restroom, when you come back, you just buy another Pepsi, and so that's the whole toolbox in full effect, man.
I saw, like you said, guys, we grew up in an era where that was just that's what everybody was taught. So there's a new invention out that you put over your drink at a bar, right? And it's like, to me, our generation, you're like, what? I mean, who leaves a drink at the bar? Like, and again, even if you're drinking at the bar, you're not going to just, you know what I'm saying? You just get a new drink. If you ain't been paying attention to your drink, we all know to get a new drink. A guy just made this invention. We announced him to a show together. And she said, "We want to do this story." And I was like, "I don't think," but see, I'm assuming because we all were taught that way, like we said, that everybody think. Obviously, a lot of people don't, because this is an actual thing. But with us, we know you put your drink down, it's gone. You ain't going back to that damn drink. But our kid, that's something else, guys. Listen, I'm sure Barry, we're talking about it. The way when we look at the lives that our kids lead versus how the lives that we lead, it's two different worlds, right? It's four different worlds. And I just left an event and I was talking about, wow, man, all the things that our kids have, but that head on the swivel piece for us was natural because you get hit in the head. It wasn't a thing where you just practicing safety. It was real. Every time my mom would visit us, she closed all the shades. I'd be like, "No, Mom, we're good." Why don't you got no shades on these windows? It's like, no, because if your shades are open, somebody crawling through the window. So it's tough because a lot of this stuff to them isn't real, and that's a struggle, sadly, that they face.
I think one of my challenges with my oldest daughter, and I'm sure you all can relate to this. David has an older daughter as well. Is when it's the opportunity to let go. My daughter, the pandemic, Barry, destroyed her HBCU experience. She had to learn from home, and she decided that instead of staying here, she wanted to get an apartment on her own. Now, I did the math for her. I explained to her, if you save your money here, when you go back to Texas, you got $10,000. I'm trying to teach them delayed gratification. And so her and I just had this exchange a couple of days, and my daughter's an artist. So for my artists out there, artists can be very temperamental. And homegirl, David, your niece just hung up on me because she didn't want to hear what I had to say. And all I was doing, Barry, I was just asking questions. I'm listening. I'm trying to get in a word edgewise. I can't get in. So I'm just asking questions. And all of a sudden, the phone that I pay for, Barry, now let me be real clear.
Say that again.
The phone that I pay for now has a dial tone on it.
No. Was there at least, Daddy, let me call you back? Was that slid in there?
No
Wow.
No anything. And she was so frustrated. But what I learned, I was listening to Bishop T.D. Jakes. Listen, Bishop Jakes, I'm going to tell you, the book, Bishop Jakes has a book out right called Don't Drop the Mic. And Bishop Jakes shares a story when he was cursed out by this guy, said he called him everything. And what he said that this is the same guy that he would use profanity if he ordered a hamburger. This is the same guy, if he was just in church, he would use that language. And so Bishop Jakes said I had to move my ego out the way and say, this is how he communicates. It has nothing to do with me. So at that time that I knew that my daughter is hurting, in the moment, be real clear, Barry, I can care less who's hurting. But as I've gotten more seasoned, and if I'm really walking in this work that I do in real time, I have to hold myself accountable, my daughter. But when I hung up, I was like, no, she, I don't know why I was looking around. Like I'm looking around. But in that moment, that's how she felt like she needed to communicate. But underneath all of that, my mother is teaching me how you engage girls. Boys, I've been very direct. David talked about this in all his writing. Girls, sometimes you gotta, what I'm discovering, you gotta piece it through. Like you say one thing, but you mean something else. I'm kind of confused. And so at that moment, she didn't have the vocabulary to say what she said. So she screamed, she hollered, she used profanity. And I could have been like, girl, do you? But I said, let me get my ego out of the way.
Wow.
And there's some pain that's there. And I sent her a message, I love you. And I said, I'm not the enemy. And I just left it at that. So it feels like she needs to call. But believe me, I'm from the south side of Chicago, and I'd have never talked to my mother that way.
Well, first of all, let me give Dr. Lamar Shields some love, because brother, you handled your moment better than I handled mine. We were on vacation last year or the year before, and we rent the chairs and the umbrella, right? So I came back from you rent 2 chairs and everybody else lays on the sand, on the towels and stuff. So my big 300 at the time 70-pound self comes back, and my daughter's in the chair. So, Big Daddy says, get up. She's like, no, I shouldn't have to get up. So just like that moment tomorrow, when she hung up, where we came from, that hang up, you was looking for something to throw. You was looking for something. You was meant to you get ready to drive over and go crazy. That moment, my mother, Jackie Johnson, jumped out of me and said, "Get you." Right. She said, "I don't think I should have to get up." So here I am in Hilton Head, South Carolina, around all these white folks, dragging my daughter out of a beach chair.
So that happened real fast.
I'm looking like the Incredible Hulk who ate too much chicken, dragging this poor little girl.
Oh my goodness!
Seconds away from the cops being called, because my ego, like you said, my ego was like. And I went there early that day to pay for the 2 chairs. And I went there, I get up at 6 a.m. to pay for the chairs. And I was like, oh, you gonna get out this chair. But it's like, yeah, man, that's the difference. Like, our parents, first of all, our parents would have been some slapping and whatever. But I was just I was so shocked. I did not handle that well.
So let me ask you this, fellas. I got because, all right.
I'm sorry, guys. I had to.
I'm glad you shared that story, because you let me know I'm not crazy. So thank you. I appreciate it, because I've had some moments. I'm like, girl, and I have to catch myself. But so there's 2 young ladies out. They have a singing group. And my wife introduced me to them, and she said, listen to these young ladies. They remind me of what our daughters could look like when they get older. And, they sound amazing. They're on Beyonce's label. I watch them they're on the show. And one day a video comes on, and I'm watching the video, and, I'm just in the background, just kind of just moving to it, ooh, ooh. And I actually see the video, and I see them. And like my mouth drops, because they're no longer little girls anymore. They've grown into these women, and one is like really like extra with her persona. The other one's a little more conservative. And my wife was laughing at me. She said, "What's wrong?" I was like, "Does she have to move like that when she's dancing?" Now this young lady's 20-some years old. She's doing what she should be doing, but I can actually see my daughters 20 years or 15 years from now, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, why she got to be all fast? But I can't make that, I can't say that, because I don't want daddy issue girls out there searching for something that they didn't get from me. So speak to me on that, because I need some help, because I know I have about 10 to 12 more years before I'm going to truly experience that in my house. And Mr. Miller, man, break it down for me, bro.
Yeah, I mean, as we have all shared in this sort of brief amount of time that we've been together. I mean, some of this we kind of know intuitively, but if you look at the research, some of the sort of the important points that are uplifted in the data, we know that particularly young Black girls who have healthy, ongoing, meaningful relationships with their daughters, we know that dramatically reduces issues around anxiety and depression. We know that when dads are actively involved in their daughters' lives, they reduce the likelihood of early sexual activity. And we know that dads in the lives of daughters improve academic achievement. And so you got four brothers on this broadcast who, because of the way that we lived and continue to live and the lessons that we teach our daughters, have been able to model those points that are in the data. And I think that the larger conversation has to be particularly targeted to those fathers who have daughters who don't really understand the power of the daddy-daughter relationship, right? I just think that, and all too often we talk about fathers and sons, but we don't necessarily talk about the power of the daddy-daughter relationship and the things, like dating your daughter, teaching your daughter at a very early age that the standard has to be very high. When a young man comes to call on you, he can't just send you a text message and then you run outside and get in the car. He has to come to the house and we have to meet him. And while that's going to be a difficult process for your daughter and for this young man, that's part of the process, that we need to meet this cat's family, right? And so I just think that there's some things that we already know about that relationship between fathers and daughters. And I think more work needs to be done on the community level, particularly with young dads who have daughters, to really help them understand the power of the daddy-daughter relationship.
Let me add to that. So the relationship that matters most to your daughter isn't the one with her mother. I want to stop right there. And David just said it's with her dad, her self-esteem, her choices, her behavior, and even her ideas about how she talks about marriage and relationships. And so we got to have those conversations, not only just from our own biological children, but from all the other girls that come into our circle, because they are watching us. They're sponges. We have to have conversations with them. When we raise our voice, sometimes too loud, we can get passionate, and then we got to explain to them, well, I'm not screaming, but I'm very passionate about where I am. But to that person, you may be screaming to them. And so I think, to add on what David says, they have to see not only how we treat their mothers, but how we treat our mother. Mark, always, the three of us, let me tell you, we always talking about our mothers. They need to see how we treat our mothers and how we engage our sisters, even the sisters that we don't like, even the cousins that we don't like. They need to see how we engage them. And I say that to say, not that the mother and daughter relationship is not important. Susan Taylor in Essence Magazine years ago did a whole piece on that. But what David is mentioning, and because I'm so glad he talked about this research behind it, because it's just not us, the empirical data from us knowing, is what the data is really saying, is that when men are involved in their children's life, David and I know when we see men in the hallway in the school, Barry, brothers and sisters, we poke our chests out. We're more observant because we don't really see that often. So it's so important for my daughter to see how Mark engages his daughter. It's so important how David sees that I engage my daughter, and vice versa. To see, I was sitting in the bed with my daughter, and I'm always in their room, because that's their time. And I was leaning back talking to my daughter Samira, and I said to her, I said, do you love me? And she said, yeah. I said, do I get on your nerve? And she says, yeah. I said, what would life be if I was not involved in your life? And she says, Baba, I don't want to think about that. 17. And I'm getting emotional thinking about it. She says, Baba, I don't even want to think about that. So that is how important men, be it the bonus dad who's working with other children, or the women that they're dating, or the stepfather, Those things are so important, and for us to see and to have those, and then to hear our take on the relationship. One of the things that Mark said when our daughters challenge us, this is another thing that we notice with our daughter. We're teaching them to challenge the system, but not to challenge us. So
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Mark, I wouldn't expect her to hang up on me. Hang up on your boyfriend.
Yeah.
But I don't
Right.
know if it was Skylar, which one you had to drag across. Looking at like, but we're teaching them how to think about that. We're teaching them to battle these, because again, ain't nothing like a beautiful sister like all our daughters, and she's sharp, and she's good with these hands, or she's good with dialing the number and calling us. And so dudes and girls, be real clear, it's hard for them to get through that because they're like, I know my father. My father taught me this. Yeah. He is surrounding me with books and women who are strong, amazing women. This is in my DNA. Now, will they get caught slipping? Yeah, because as Mark talked about, the one dude that tried to come at your daughter. Mm-hmm. But again, we're giving them a foundation. And, go ahead, Mark.
No, I like you said, man, I always say my wife can love me and believe in me because of how she loved her father. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, across racial lines, that's something that very few people have, is that great relationship with their father. So I always tell the story, when I lost that $300,000 job and my wife never doubted that I'd return, though I have not, that's because of her love and her belief in her father. That's number one. That's one point. Then number two, like you said, Lamar and David, one thing I learned, guys, and I think dads sometimes don't realize, and the kids watching us kind of, when me and Allison do the way we do argue with each other, which is always respectful. But something I learned one day, guys, was I was making a point with Allison, and I couldn't figure out why we would get to a certain point, and I could just see something in her eyes. And what I saw in her eyes was there's a certain way that my body language and the way I say stuff is judgment. And nobody likes to be judged, know? And I think the interesting thing is my kids don't really get as tripped up by it as my wife does. But it made me really think about, because like you said, a lot of times you're thinking you're being logical, you think you're making sense, but the way you're saying it, the way I'm saying it, the way I'm positioned makes really my wife and my bosses, former bosses, feel a certain way. And I think I got it. I would say it's judgment. They're feeling like I'm judging them. They're feeling like I'm talking down, or there's something about so back to the ego, Dr. Shields, I had to start monitoring how I'm communicating, how I'm saying it. And just like you said with the girls, let's not talk about weight gain. Let's not talk about, like you say, decisions in regard to grades and intelligence. You got to be careful. You may not think you're saying anything wrong, but it could be how you're saying it. If you're monitoring the kitchen, how we growing up, what you doing, or whatever, people, they start, it's just like being conscious of how you act as a father and how you act as just in relationships. And I think that, like so somebody said earlier, the boys, it's different. Girls, the way they react, different. And then finally, what you said, Lamar, about when I had that interaction with Skylar, her point as the artistic, sensitive person was, don't I have a right to sit in this chair too? I'm on vacation too. Just because you guys are the parents, do y'all get all the rights? Now, of course, and we were raised with hell yeah. And shut up. But this new, you have to be better than that. And so I apologized, told her I would never do that again. And you have a valid point.
Mm-hmm. So you said something, Mark. You said judgment, and I want to get into that too, because I want to talk about clothes image when it comes to our daughters. They start getting older. They're starting to want to see themselves in a different way. And someone mentioned it earlier where they were talking about when you're looking at the hip hop culture and you need to WAP this, and like you're just inviting like attention, so to speak. Talk to me about, and talk to our listeners and about how do they handle when you see that your daughter is now trying to wear something that is It's sexy. She's going, what is that? Forever 21, and now all of a sudden, used to like the little cute jumpers, and she has the nice stuff. Like that's what I'm going through now, and I'm enjoying it. But I know there's going to be a point where it's, hey, I can already see that. Did your mama see that yet? And I don't have nothing to worry about because I know mama's going to take care of it. But I, I'm not ready. So talk to me, like let's, Mr. Miller, go ahead and start us off, brother. And then
I may not be the one you want to start with, man, because
yes, I do. Yeah, I felt it. I felt it.
That's my Achilles heel, and I'm being real honest, man, because I have struggled with my older daughter with fashion. Let me just say that. And so I have realized that I made a lot of mistakes because I tend to be kind of rough, right? People know me. I tend to be kind of rough on the verbal. That's why Mark is laughing. And I'll go for the jugular. But I just have realized that some of the mistakes I've made with my oldest daughter is 25, particularly around communicating that might not be the dress that you should wear. Again, I'm able to and have learned some of those lessons as I talk to my 16-year-old. But as Lamar and Mark have indicated, language is very, very important when you're talking to young ladies. How we say it, tone, temperament, pitch, body language, all of those things, particularly for Black girls in this society who are always being judged and always being dehumanized. As fathers, how we speak to our daughters and the things that we say are just so important. And so for me, I've had to learn, through really through trial and error, and have made some mistakes and have had to, apologize. Like, what the hell you think you're going with that little skirt on? And I've had to, and after it came out of my mouth, Mark, I'm like, that's not really what I wanted to say. But, so again, for these younger dads, how language is so important, man. Language is so critically important.
Yeah, Barry, I don't really have that problem. Really, both of my daughters are artists, man, and so clothes means a lot. Clothing means a lot to both of them when it comes to either being on stage as an actor or performing. Hadaya has a band, so I'm really mindful of that. What I am teaching my daughters is about controlling their body. I don't want to be an authority on their body because you see that enough. One of the things that I was very mindful of my children and their mother as well, and my mother was mindful. We didn't play the nicknames. We didn't call chubby or dark or the dark one or the light. We didn't do any of that. You called them by their African names, and we were very mindful of that. And we didn't talk about size or shape or anything like that because my daughters are different sizes, and so we didn't body shame them, and so we didn't have to, and I didn't have to really get on them about their clothes. Now, Hadaya would come down and wear something, and I would sort of cringe internally, but instead of calling her out, I would call her in. I'm learning that, to call her in, but not in front of individuals, because her being an artist, I know clothing means a lot to her, okay, on stage and lighting and things of that nature. Now, her grandmother may have a different conversation with her. Yes, gets it fast. I really don't. So again, I am learning a lot through them when it comes. The reality is this: you got 3 cool dads, but we ain't ever gonna be as cool as we think we are. Understand that. And this is a different honor and respect a lot of the things, and they know what I tolerate and what I don't tolerate as well.
So what does calling in look like for you?
So calling in is really not shaming publicly, not publicly shaming her in front of her siblings, her friends. Calling her in is having a conversation, maybe just us in the space. Calling her out would be publicly shaming her in front of individuals. I for a while I managed it. The running joke is I always say she fired me. That's a whole nother conversation. She said she fired me. And so because I saw a different way with her career, and that's probably why she's doing much better without me. But I never publicly called her. I mean, Mark, no, he's in entertainment. David also, as speaker, that's entertainment as well. And so I'm just mindful. I really respect how my daughters treat their bodies and the things that they do. my oldest daughter, she's going through the tattoo phase. You know, she's an artist, she's a painter, she's a poet. I mean, what I really expect those things, but she's being very mindful about what she's doing.
Bring it home for us, Mark.
Yeah, it's interesting because mom really does handle those things, and I'll whisper to mom, but it's not like Lamar said. It's kind of like their artists. Sydney was, she was the Ebony Fire dancer, and they have the provocative outfits, and Sydney was, Sydney. All my girls are pretty voluptuous, and that's something that's so interesting about Black girls. Like it could be a regular outfit, but they make the outfit talk. So it's not really. And so it's funny because Sydney's lost weight, and so that outfit that seemed provocative last season is not as, you know what I mean? And I think that's real for Black women all the time. You talk about like just a simple knit dress. I was at a happy hour, earlier today, just a knit dress. It's just a simple knit dress. But
that knit dress. That knit dress.
Knit dress. Stay focused. It
was a knit dress.
Stay focused.
And the girls, I think that's, the one thing that is funny, I think some fathers have a challenge when, like, all my girls have boobs, when the boobs come, and, everybody's, I think a lot of dads have a challenge with that, like the little girl versus the growing into a woman thing. I think, David, I'm probably sure there's some information there. Some guys kind of, they're not as, they kind of almost get a little distant. And I always try to make myself not be that. I tried to still, because they're still your little baby, they're still your little girl. And I think some guys, that would be interesting, David. I don't know what the research says, but I imagine at a certain age, sometimes some dads don't handle that phase really well. But yeah, Allison really, the fact that they admire her, I think really is a big player. The fact that they get into their fights about clothes, but they still admire her opinion. And she kind of handles that.
That's helpful. Listen, gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for this evening. This has been extremely helpful. If you could leave one piece of advice for a young father right now, what would it be? Mr. Miller, let's start with you.
Again, just one nugget would be hang in there. No matter what happens between you and mom, because again, we got to keep it real. Sometimes things with mom don't necessarily always work out. Your daughter will always need you to be a shining example of Black manhood.
Excellent. Dr. Shields.
Several things. I would say, teach her to go where she is celebrated and not simply tolerated. Compliment her as much as possible, and teach her about the richness of her African, if she is of African descent, teach her about her richness of Black history and culture.
Mark, bring us home, brother.
Yep, I would say number one, across the board, you have to love yourself. You have to love yourself, number one, and then from a dad's standpoint, be the truth, man. You can't lie to your children. You have to be genuine. You have to be genuine. You have to be truthful to your child. Be truthful to your child. Don't. They're looking at everything. It's not what you say either. Who cares about conversation? It's like what you do. Your actions speak louder than words. And like David said, as a father, they're watching you. You have a responsibility to not break their heart.
Mm-hmm.
Well said, brother. Well said. Gentlemen, thank you again. And thank you for everyone that tuned in. Black Fathers Foundation. This is Foundation Conversations for My Brothers with Daughters. We will see you next time. I believe we have something going on in July. I'm pretty sure we have something going on in July. I just don't know what it is in July yet, but we'll be back in July. All right. Hey, thanks again, folks. We've had a lot of good folks out there commenting. And hey, Mr. Boone, thanks for chiming in, brother.
What's up, brother?
Beatty Boone in the building.
New York in the building.
Kirby.
Take care.